If in gatherings like Davos there is at least a semblance of social responsibility, then a large part of that credit must go to Bill and Melinda Gates. Melinda Gates, thanks very much indeed.
Thanks for having me.
For joining us. It is quite remarkable that because of you and Bill and the foundation, that the terms of the debate have shifted. So if you look at a gathering like Davos and the number of sessions that are now being held about social responsibility and inclusiveness, I think a large part of that is because of both of you.
Well, that's great to hear, and I think it's just mostly important that it's on the agenda so people talk about it. And also, I think one of the things is when you make progress, I think that makes people optimistic and hopeful. And what we try to do is come and show the huge progress in childhood deaths that we've made as a world. And it takes, world leaders to come together to help make that progress.
Well, it's interesting because since you started the foundation and since you started to go down that particular path, it's virtually the only thing you guys talk about. I mean, there's no talk of Microsoft, there's no talk of the economy. It's only about vaccination and fighting AIDS, and now recently your big polio initiative.
I think that's because Bill and I have this belief that the world can get better by helping families lift themselves up. And so many of the things that we talk about, like vaccination, if you see that, from 1960, we've gotten from 20 million childhood deaths now down to about 8 million last year. The progress has been made is because of innovation that's coming from all over the world. So it's that belief in those tools and that innovation and the dissemination of them that make us know you can make change. And that's what makes us both really excited.
Give me some examples of the kind of change that you've seen yourself in the work that you've done. I mean, I think you've done quite a lot on various fronts, but polio is where you're giving a big push, a disease which is now down to just 4 countries in the world, of which one is India.
Yeah, we have seen amazing progress on polio, and India is one of, the shining examples of what can be done. In the last year, you all have gone in the last year from 741 cases down to 41. And so Bill and I both took trips to India last year. I was in Uttar Pradesh, he was in Bihar, because we wanted to see what it takes. I mean, the commitment from the Indian government and the health ministry to really investigate all of those cases, and when they see a case of polio, to vaccinate around it. That's what it takes, and that's how we're going to wipe it out in these 4 endemic countries. And India's on its way there, so we like to come here and hold India up as the example of saying this can absolutely be done, and we know it's going to get done.
You say that it's something that when you come and you talk about what you're doing to the rest of the world, but it's also because of the kind of commitment, financial commitment particularly, that you put behind this whole effort, which is what got it so much attention, and it sort of center staged it. I mean, when you talk of $30-odd billion, that's not a small amount of money.
Well, and I think when people understand that we're willing to invest our money in something and that we really track, I mean, we're not going to, our first grant, the Global Alliance for Vaccines and Immunizations, we would have never made the second follow-up grant, so initially 750 million, again a second donation, 750 million. You don't do that unless you're seeing change and progress. And I think that's what we try to highlight and show with our money, so that then governments will come in. The government of India has put, $600 million, or will in the next 2 years, behind polio. That's what it's going to take. But I think if people see the investments work and they see we do it from the private side, then they're willing to invest alongside as well, which is what it takes.
But your experience with governments has also been mixed, right? I mean, even with India, with your HIV initiative at the time when you were trying to do a sort of a transition to the government, and the government wasn't very keen. Are there any lessons to be learned there as well?
Well, I think initially the government wasn't keen, but I think we're still making that transition, and now we're actually making huge strides in making that transition. But I think one of our lessons learned is how to work with health ministries and governments from the get-go, so it doesn't feel like what we're doing is something separate from their goals. And I think that's one of our lessons coming out of India.
Is there also the other side to it, where do you feel sometimes that amongst the voluntary sector of people who are working in the field in these areas, that they view somebody like you, yourself, or the foundation representing sort of a very large philanthropic setup with a corporate backing, with some amount of skepticism?
I think you get that skepticism, particularly when you come into a country and if you haven't worked there before. And I think one of the things we've worked harder to do in the last few years is to work on the ground in culturally appropriate ways. So one of the lessons coming out of India is if we're going to get these childhood deaths down, a lot of it's cultural practices. And when you talk with the moms, once you get it in terms that they can understand, they'll spread it for you. And I think that's one of the most exciting things, and one of the things that we've had to learn along the way.